Hello and welcome to Pathways. I am your host, Amber Stitt. And today we welcome the famous Jonathan Green. Welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So let's see here. I almost feel like I have to take some notes. We have over 300 books, best-selling books. And then we will talk about where you're living here shortly because that ties into another topic that we try to touch on with the Pathways of Peak Performance framework, which is where we talk about having some resilience in life. I think you're embodying that as it stands, just learning about you. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But you're also a ghostwriter, but you have multiple businesses. I think the main focus, it sounds like, is working with entrepreneurs and just helping people become more efficient in life. And so I don't want to steal the thunder. I think you could probably tell me a little bit better than I can read. I'd like to hear from you just a little bit about a day in the life of Jonathan Green.
Yeah. So every day I'm always looking at how can I be more efficient? How can I get more done in less time? Which means I can spend more time with the kids, more time on the beach, more time not working. So that's why I love artificial intelligence. That's why I love automation tools. I'm always looking at how can I streamline my emailing? How can I streamline my content creation? Because that's where it's easy to get bogged down, where you're just doing repetitive tasks that take a huge amount of time. So a lot of what I do starts there. I actually spend a lot of time not on the computer, just thinking, like planning out what I'm going to do and kind of being strategic. I don't want my email sequence to go. What kind of experience do people go through? What do I need to fix today? And I make these lists and then I work through them, because when I started out, I just used to kind of jump from fire to fire, emergency to emergency. Right. And you feel like you worked 8 hours. You go, what did I do today? Right. And every single day there's a surprise, either a good surprise or a bad surprise. And it's like, oh, this surprise is going to take 3 hours to fix.
Yeah.
And it always happens. So building in that buffer time is really important. So that's a big part of what I do, is just make a list that's actually manageable and achievable.
With the framework, we talk about 5 steps of having resilience. And it's really to eventually have financial freedom because, as you say, serve no master, right?
Yeah.
It's really the fire, the obstacle, whatever it is. I work in insurance planning. Things happen and we talk about life and death a lot in my industry. And if we're not planning in advance, we're having a lot of stress because things are going to not always go our way. And I think that's where automation can be, like when we're talking about processes, but when we're looking at just in general, getting a little more organized in advance, being more proactive can take away the stress. But it also gives you that balance between, like you talked about, being with your kids. Now, I don't know that you've always been remote, but you have chosen through a series of events to be where you are today, which I think a lot of people wonder what it would be like to live on an island with your family. But I think you ultimately picked that destination because you found a way, and it truly was using technology and not being afraid of it. So what was that pivotal point where you are kind of changing the mode from journalist, writer? I think you always were writing, reporting it, putting it together, but how did you come to this aha moment? This is what I'm going to do. We're going to make it happen.
So I always thought the entire reason to start your own business was to be able to be location independent. So the people that I learned from kind of that were in my life, they were like, financial independence leads to locational independence. So to me, that was the assumption. But what I found is that once I hit the point where I was making enough money totally for myself and I just had that freedom, I was like, well, I'm hitting the road. I started going from country to country around the world. And all my friends were like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And they started renting offices and hiring staff and buying suits. I was like, what are you doing? You broke the promise we made. Like, why would you leave the corporate just to go back and start your own corporate? That's not what I want. Yeah. So I've always valued freedom more than revenue. And that's part of my decision-making calculus. So the first step in the process is to really do research. The number of people who have no idea what it costs to live in a foreign country is astounding. Most people won't go to Google and type in cost of living and the name of a country. So most people don't even know how much it costs to move to Hawaii, right? And it's like, we have this really interesting culture where people will do zero research. They watched Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous from the 1980s. Yes. Those are pre-internet days, right? It's like, oh, but the cost of living, it's all about long distance phone calls. Long distance phone calls don't even exist anymore. But you still think, oh, people expect for you and me to be talking right now and there should be an echo because it's such a long wire we're talking through. So a lot of people's knowledge is really expired. But as soon as you leave the country, your tax obligations drop by $100,000 a year. You don't pay taxes on like the first $150,000 you make. So that alone covers whatever fear you have. Such a huge difference. The second thing is everything is cheaper here. The cost of living, the cost of food, the cost of education, the cost of housing, all of your bills drop, and you don't have to go far, right? There's an amazing program in the Virgin Islands where you can go for a year and you just say, yeah, I'm working for myself. And they go, okay, stamp. It's so easy to get. You can go to Mexico has some amazing places. So you don't even have to go far to immediately change your tax obligations. I have a lot of friends who moved to Puerto Rico for that reason. You're still in America, where you're living on an island, but there's no taxes. So it's really about, the first step is to go, let me just find out how hard it is to do, right? Let me find out what it costs, the cost of living. Like you can live like a king or a queen for $3,000 a month in probably 50 countries.
Yeah.
South America.
It's pretty amazing.
Europe, Asia. You don't even have to choose any continent, everywhere. So that's the first step. The second step is to get over your fear. So here's what every American says. When you say, I'm moving to another country, you go, what about the crime? I'm like, do you have any idea what people say about American crime? We have the highest incarceration rate of any country. We have the highest murder rate of almost any country. We have massive amounts of crime compared to the rest of the world. And we don't even realize it, because when you watch the news in America, there is no international news. So our only knowledge comes from the occasional movie. Like, oh, everything I know about Europe, I learned from the movie Taken. And it's like, well, it's not a true story, but that's really what happens. And once you go, I'll just actually research everywhere you want to go. There's a YouTuber who's going around showing apartment listings in that city and showing what they cost. I watch those videos sometimes because it's really interesting to see, oh, what if I want to go to because I've thought about going to Montevideo. I've thought about moving to some other country, oh, maybe I would try the thing in the Virgin Islands. There's an amazing program in Estonia. There's an amazing program in Fiji now. There's a lot of places that have specific digital nomad visas and all these opportunities. It's like they're trying to attract, because I'm the ideal expat because I live here, but I make my money in America, but I spend all my money here. That's the dream. I only put money into the economy and I'm not living off a fixed income. So it really, they love it here. So there's a lot of countries where you can go on a tourist visa for years. So 18 months or 3 years. And it's just look.
It's pretty amazing. And I'll see this in the financial planning industry, financial services industry, where everything can be pretty antiquated. And we hear certain things growing up. This is what you need to do. This is where you should go to college. And part of the podcast is to really have people, next generation or others, going into a transition from their corporate job into this retirement mode, and they're lost and don't know what to do for their next 20 to 40 years now. What are we doing? Focusing on what you love to do. You've been able to take variations of writing, doing research and that journalism, and then pumping it into the resources that we have. And I feel like sometimes even with networking and community, how to market yourself, people I think sometimes don't do the work. They don't utilize the resources that they have at hand. And that's really where I wanted to get your expertise today on ChatGPT and some of these other programs that you're using, because it's pretty amazing how it's not that hard to find an option to do something a little bit differently. But you mentioned fear, and I think that can hold a lot of people back. I think it can be so simple if you just give it a go and not be scared of trying something new. And so, when you're talking about taxes, other economies, it is pretty interesting. I just had somebody just say they were in Croatia, and my friend who's Croatian, she lives here. She goes, it's one of the most beautiful places and very affordable, but people just assume because they've heard of this in wartime, decades ago, that it's a bad place to be. It's in the middle of other, chaos. And living in Arizona, we'll go over the border to Mexico, and people say to us all the time, aren't you worried? You're going to get kidnapped. There's going to be a gun war, or, whatever it is. There is danger, but there's a lot of murder happening in the Phoenix metro area too. So it is pretty interesting that we have so many resources, but yet the media can kind of take the forefront, and then people kind of stop vetting things out for themselves.
Yeah. Where I live, there was a purse snatching a few years ago, and it was all over the news. That would never make the news in America, right? It's and you find this is someone who had too much to drink. They walk around in the middle of the night and spinning their purse over their arm, dancing in 1940s movie, and someone drive by on a motorcycle just grabbed it. It's you would never do that in America, and that would never make the news. That's a big crime. So that's really the difference, is that we tend to have no basis for comparison, and we create these fears that basically the way employers keep their employees is by keeping you in a state of fear and hope. They want to keep you afraid they might fire you and hopeful they might give you a raise. If they can keep you in between those states, which is in a state of constant emotional turmoil, that's the ideal employee. So you're constantly going, I'm afraid, I have hope. Yes. I'm afraid, I have hope. I'm not afraid enough to leave, and I'm not hopeful enough to actually ask for the raise. And whatever your boss is paying you is less than your worth because that's why your company is profitable. If every employee was paid exactly the amount of revenue they generated for the company, companies would be break even. That will never happen, right? Because they have to pay all the stock owners and all the other people. So whatever you're doing, you're always being underpaid, no matter where you're working or what you're doing if you work for someone else. So this fear is how the government keeps us sticking where we are because they want us to keep paying our taxes. And it's how your boss keeps you where you are with a job you hate. So, I mean, I got fired, which is the best thing ever happened to me, but you have to at some point go, let me just see what's possible. But once you do, like your eyes just open.
Yeah. And this herd mentality that can be out there. And I'm going to add to something you were talking about. And I think you tee this up on your podcast too, back to the government or the fearful thinking of that job security. I think you've talked about it on your podcast or it's in one of your pieces that fear mongering of people worried about, that income, that paycheck. And we see it a lot with institutional accounts too, where they say college savings account and different things where you're essentially giving your money away for a long duration. And that's not that you're not caring about your family or that we won't get into the stock market and things like that. But if you're truly not able to use your dollars now, and you talked about traveling and being able to write things off versus just adding more expense, just to have this bigger place for people to go and hiring and bringing more, I guess, risk or responsibilities, more overhead might not be necessary. There's a lot more flexibility when you can write something off and do something without creating this large entity that you've left. You're just recreating another one. But we see it a lot with just accounts, like people losing the freedom to do something with their dollars today to create opportunities. That's a perfect transition into how you've been utilizing resources and helping entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So this year with kind of when ChatGPT finally became good enough to use, when it kind of hit 3.5 and it went from interesting idea to, okay, I could actually use some of this content publicly. I could post this and I wouldn't be embarrassed. The most important thing they did was launch at $20 a month for unlimited usage. What that did is it ruined a lot of their competitors because a lot of competitors were charging hundreds of dollars a month for an inferior product. And it put this massive downward pressure. So the first thing I would say is if you're using any tool that you subscribed to more than a year ago, you need to go check what they're charging right now because they're probably charging new members significantly more. I know some brands that had dropped their prices 70%, 80%. There are a bunch of companies that I'm expecting to go out of business next year because they simply can't compete.
Yeah.
And my overhead for my company this year has dropped 60%. By next month, it will be 80%. I'm going through a final transition. So your cost for starting an online business should be really, really low. When I was growing up, the traditional model was, you go to the bank, you ask for $25,000 with your business. They gave you the money, you start a business. And if you start a brick and mortar business, you can hope to make a 3% profit per year. Like that's the standard. If you're killing it, you make a 5%. And a lot of people still think it's that way. I started my business for $500. Now you can start it for about $100. If you have $100 a month, you have enough money to start a 7-figure business. And you don't need to hire your first employee until you break $10 million a year. Like you just don't. So the change in technology means that you can have very low overhead. You can have a massive amount of control of the business. AI can fill in a lot of the gaps that used to need a VA or an employee to do.
Yeah.
And it means that you don't have to worry about someone saying they did a project and they didn't do it and you still paid for it. All of that stuff, that stress, because I hate managing employees. It's just an additional stress. That's gone. So I went from 20 employees down to 2. They both do 2 very specific tasks. I can check their work once a week in about 20 minutes each, tops. One of them runs my Pinterest and the other one, I just have specific tasks in a spreadsheet. I just check it and they're always done. So I don't have to think about it too much. So part of it is going, I'm going to do a reassessment. Sometimes we get stuck in like the tools that we've been using and we don't want to make changes. Like I'm changing my website host right now to cut my cost by a couple $100s a month. It's very stressful because something always goes wrong and something did.
Yeah.
We're working through it, but there's always that process. It's like, oh, this is so stressful. So those things always exist. And you just have to go through a little bit of pain and a little bit of stress. And then on the other side, your costs are down, your business is faster. So the real advantage with AI is that it gives you a wider margin for making mistakes. So when you first started using computers in the 1980s, right, with the program, if you misspelled one word, it would go, I don't know what you're talking about. That directory doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. And that's carried through. If I misspell the word friend, if I switch the I and the E, some of my software has no idea what I was thinking. What word is this?
Right.
We can't solve this. I was like, I have the 5 letters. They're just out of order. How could you possibly not solve this?
Right.
AI, more than being an AI, it just widened the range of what you can say and it will know what you mean. It can guess. Like if I see you misspell the word friend, I will figure it out right away.
Yeah.
If you write the word friend with crayon, and the characters look weird, all still figured out, which computers never ever do, right? That ability, those captcha things. So now there's this ability we have to figure out things without having to be as smart as we need to. And the big trick, here's the biggest trick with AI, is that they give you this blank page. It's a nightmare. When I first saw the ChatGPT page, I go, where's the onboarding? Where's the training? How do the commands work? They're like, we're not going to tell you.
So you're even like, whoa. Even you've been working with different processes for a long time. It was even a little intimidating at first. What's the deal? How do you use this?
I hate it. It was my as a writer, my worst nightmare is to be locked in a room with a typewriter, 500 pages of blank white paper, and someone says, write a book. And I go, about what? They go, I'm not going to tell you. Write it now.
Yeah.
And if you get it wrong, we're going to kill you. That's what it feels like. So it's very stressful for someone non-technical. They go, oh, I think I have to learn a bunch of technical stuff. And they tell you, oh, just ask ChatGPT what you're good at. Well, when you ask it that, it will give you the 10 dumbest answers.
Yeah.
Because of the way it's programmed, basically, it's going to always choose the most common. Most people ask dumb questions. Most websites are bad, right? Most websites have no visitors. Like all the websites we all made from AOL in the 1990s that had like music you couldn't turn on, those flashing animations you couldn't make stop. Those are still out there. So those are messing up the scale. Every GeoCities, every Angel website, those old hosts, every MySpace page. Remember MySpace would play music and you couldn't turn it off for the first few years. They only added the ability to turn off someone's profile music after a few years.
I felt cool being able to copy paste code.
Yeah. And it was such an amazing thing. But that means that the majority of the internet is actually websites we would hate now. Can you imagine right now if you visited my website, music played, and there's no way to turn it off? You have to turn off your speakers or unplug your speakers to make it stop. And then it just switches to the speaker in your monitor that you forgot was there. So when you ask for the majority opinion is always bad. The majority of data is always bad. Most products don't sell. Most ideas are bad. Most books are bad. So you want to start with a different approach. And this was the game changer for me. This is when I really figured out is that if you ask the right question, you'll get the right answer. Most people try to think of what's the perfect prompt. What do I have to say? And here's the trick. This will change everything. This will turn you into top 1% ChatGPT user, any AI. This is all you need to learn. One prompt. Command, question. Here's what I want. What information do you need from me? I want to create podcast show notes for today's episode. What information do you need from me? I want to find out my perfect customer avatar. What information do you need from me? I want to write a blog post. What information do you need from me? I want to do SEO for my blog post. What information do you need from me? If you can just remember this, here's what I want, followed by what information do you need from me? You don't have to be smart anymore. It flips it into interrogative mode, which means it will ask you questions and say the data that it needs. You don't have to learn any other prompts. You don't have to buy a prompt guide. You don't have to go through those really awful infographics that are really complicated and scary. You don't need any of that stuff. You need one prompt. Here's what I want. What information you need from me? Once you have that down, everything is easy. And that removes all of that need. And that's what we always wanted, was an AI that will just tell us, kind of be cooperative. And that's the secret.
How'd you test that? What project were you like, aha, this is it?
A friend of mine was writing how to do copywriting with AI. And I was like, this is so hard. Your method is so hard. As someone who's been writing sales letters for 6 years, I find this brutally difficult.
Okay.
One of the questions was the prompt, and in a bracket, it goes customer avatar. And I said, wait, you want a person who's writing their first sales letter to know the fill in the blank of customer avatar?
Yeah.
I've been in this business for 13 years. I know for 99% of people, if you say, what's your customer avatar? They're going to hang up on you because it's such a hard question. It's literally the hardest question you can ask. If someone's new in business, they have no idea. Even when I used to teach it with a worksheet, it still takes like hours. It's very hard. It's a lot of guesswork. It's a lot of process. And then it turns out you're completely wrong. Once you start getting customers, you have to reassess it. For that to be the variable in a Mad Lib, I was like, that's literally the hard question you could ask. You might as well instead, here's how to write the copy. Something bracket. What's their deepest secret you've never told anyone? Close bracket, and then continue the prompt. It's just as hard. It's that hard of a question. Like, what's the worst thing you've ever done you've never told anyone? That's an easier question to answer for most people than what's your customer avatar. So I said, there has to be an easier way. And I said, ChatGPT, I'm trying to figure out my customer avatar for a new product. What information do you need from me? And it goes, bing, 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 bing. And I was like, what the? And it was 7 questions. And I go, can you ask me one at a time? And it goes, sure. And then it was a conversation. So that changed everything for me, because I just don't think it should be hard, and it's not supposed to be hard. It's not meant to be hard. There's a lot of people that are teaching the hard way because they haven't seen an easier way. And it took me a while to figure it out too. And I've learned some very complicated prompting methods. I'm a very high level prompt engineer. Now, even when I'm creating a really advanced prompt, this is how I start. I say, I want to create a custom prompt that does this. What information do you need from me? So I still use my prompt to make my other prompts. So it's the seed of all great prompt. And it allows you to be dumb again. Because normally you have to be really smart and ask the perfect question in the perfect phrasing like a coder. Now you don't have to, because it will tell you what it needs. It will tell you if you've asked the wrong question or if it doesn't have enough data.
I suppose that's potentially why people are scared to use it. Again, when we look at people starting a new business or transitioning out and they're trying to innovate, they might not feel as tech savvy if they are maybe Gen X or older. These prompts, then, if they could just understand how to phrase things, that could potentially change it all. Did you already cover the biggest mistake of ChatGPT? Because was that answered already within the story?
Yeah, it's really the big mistake people make is giving it a command, because you risk giving it the wrong instruction.
Do you think it's because they're used to Google and searching in Google with certain questions and phrases?
I blame Star Trek. I think that people are so used to people saying computer and telling the computer what to do. We think that's how we're supposed to talk to it, because that's what we see in media. We never see in media people talk to a computer kind of kindly. We saw War Games, we saw Star Trek, whatever you saw, like you never see letting the AI kind of interact in a better way. We don't see that in media.
And maybe they're just not going to accept the fact this is happening. And again, they don't want to accept the reality that this is here. And I know there's a lot of fear mongering around this. You know, if you teach this more, it's going to be more harmful, you know, and I feel like we just have to lean in to what innovation we have. And you got to stay on top of things. If anything, if you're not running your business and being more efficient and having the ability to free up more space for more creativity, I don't know how relevant you're going to be.
So in the 1970s, when graphing calculators became affordable, a lot of math professors said, these should be illegal. If you let a kid use one of these, they'll never learn math. A lot of really famous mathematicians were writing articles, talking professors at Harvard and high school teachers were all like, no way. And what happened when you and I were in high school, right? You had to have a graphing calculator and you had to show your work on the graphing calculator. So technology goes from this is cheating to this is mandatory in education. And at work, in the 1990s, if you remember job listings, this is when I was in high school. I remember seeing job listings where like internet skills a plus, the ability to use a web browser a plus, email a plus. Then it became experience with Microsoft Office Suite encouraged, then required. Now they don't even put it. It's an expectation. If you show up for a job and you go, great, what's email? Can you explain that to me real quick? They would be like, what? Because it's gone from, oh, that would be cool to it's assumed. It's so assumed they don't put in a job listing. And that's what's going to happen with AI. AI is going to go from it's cheating, right? We already went through that phase. It's cheating to it would be nice to have in 3 to 5 years, every job listing will say 3 to 5 years of AI experience mandatory. So all the people that don't start now and go, I'm going to wait 3 years, they're going to be literally unemployable because you can never recover from the 3 years of experience you didn't get when you had the chance. And that's what's really scary for me. That's why I talk a lot to people that are in employment. If you don't start learning now, unless you're 57, right, and you're going to retire at 60, you're going to be fired. I know companies that have already done it. I know a company that sent their employees an email on Friday, said, come in Monday with a plan for how you're going to use AI to do your job more efficiently, or don't come in on Monday. They send it to their entire staff. So it's not a matter of if this happens, it's a matter of when, and it's going to happen at every company. And the companies that don't will be gone because you're 40% faster. A study just found people using ChatGPT are 40% faster and 18% higher quality. So you don't drop quality. So if I can have an employee who can do 5 days of work in 3, why would I have an employee who can do 5 days of work in 5?
Exactly.
So, and it's not hard. That's the important thing I want you to know. You can master ChatGPT in 3 to 4 hours. You don't need to spend a week learning it. You take my one prompt, you just sit down and go, I'm going to just spend today on this. I'm going to watch some YouTube tutorials, or maybe they'll read my book. I don't care. You can watch a bunch of free videos. It's fine. That's how I started. And by the end of the day, you'll have a solid understanding of what's possible and what's not possible. And you just watch the videos that are relevant to what you do. You only need to know 10 or 20 prompts. You don't need to know 500. You need to know 10 or 20 commands that match what you do every week. And that will increase your efficiency.
Yeah.
Now, right now, I know people that have gotten 50% raises because the first person in their company learned AI.
No way. There's part of me just wants to let, especially, again, it goes to any generation, even if you're not a business owner, and it goes back to personal branding and communication skills. If you're not honing in on that, just because you're working underneath somebody, if you're not standing out, and I haven't heard it the way that you've explained it with the network that you have or what you've read, but that just reiterates to me why it is more crucial than ever. You can't just say, okay, well, I don't want to be a business owner, so therefore I'm not going to do these things. You will become replaceable and irrelevant if we don't keep up.
This is the biggest opportunity to ask for a raise that's existed in probably 30 years. Because right now, 47% of the boards of directors have told their CEOs this year that they want to have AI implemented within 12 months. Every single CEO has said, what does that mean? Because nobody knows, right? It's such a,
right.
We don't really know what AI means. It hasn't been figured out. So that's why the opportunity is so wide. Half of the companies, and these CEOs are freaking out, as you would be. What am I supposed to do? And because you go, what do you mean by AI? And they go, just do it. Figure it out and then do it, right? Figure out this expertise, figure out a plan. We don't care what it costs, but we don't want to be left behind. So there's a massive FOMO, that fear of missing out. So this is the best opportunity for employees who don't want to start their own business that there's ever been, because you can be the first person in your company that was AI. How many people were the first person who had to build a website? The first one who had to do email at their company became super strong, right? Such a strong position. You can ask for that big raise. When's the last time you heard of anyone getting a 50% raise in a 12-month period? No. That doesn't happen. It's happening now because companies realize that once you have that skill, you can jump to another company as well, because you can be the person at that company. So you become
leveraged contract negotiations because of the skills.
Imagine if you set up all the AI at your company and you go, yeah, I'm thinking of leaving. How terrified am I? Because no one knows how the machine works, right? You're the only person that knows how it all works. So you're actually
the Xerox machine. Who can fix that? I think we should give a referral link to you. So anyone that gets their 50% boost and they learn this tip from you, you need to get a little bit of an affiliate commission. What do you think?
Just tell people, just post on my LinkedIn profile. I just got a raise because I did what you said. Love to hear about that. I want that for people because I just have this fear that so many people in a few years are going to lose their jobs and be like, nobody warned me.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, the carrot and the stick. The carrot is you can have a massive raise, and the stick is you can be pushed out of your job. Because, would you hire an accountant that says, oh, I don't do spreadsheets, I don't do calculators? No. Right? It sounds laughable. That's how people are going to respond to, I don't do AI in 3 years.
Well, I've run into people not using Excel, and it's really hard if you don't know how to do Google Sheets in the world that I'm in. And you gotta be, maybe there's a program you're going to teach me about that says, you don't need Excel, Amber. But there's a different generation that hasn't used it the same way, I don't think. And it's interesting between like a Droid and an Apple or PC versus Mac as well in the business world. But having that ability to be able to cross train between. But yeah, if you could be the person just set it up, that is job security if you want that for yourself. But again, the goal is to build the position. And I always say, do what you love where you're talented. I think that's where the happiness can come from. And you're not worried about retirement because you're always doing something that you love and that you enjoy, but you got to keep learning. So how many different AI softwares outside of maybe the ones you have you paid for all at one time?
Your AI budget, if you want to go all in, is $32 a month. You need one AI text tool. It can be Claude. It can be Perplexity. It can be ChatGPT, which I use. They're all $20 a month for their maximum account. They don't have a bigger one. They don't have an enterprise level. And then you need an image generator. Now, there's a built-in one with ChatGPT. It's just not my favorite. So I use Midjourney. That's $12 a month. Other than that, I do have some other AI tools that I was testing for a while. Nobody needs those. So everything with spreadsheets. ChatGPT can connect to Google Sheets and do all my spreadsheet work for me, designs formulas. It can analyze spreadsheets. It can fill in rows for me. All of those things it can just do, which is crazy, right? It has these abilities. It has a plugin. I can have it watch a YouTube video and summarize it for me. Or all of these abilities that connect to other websites are now there, and the tool's always getting stronger. So that's what I say when it puts a downward pressure, because before most software was really expensive. Like the entire overhead for running your business. Then you have to have a website, which is like $7 to $10 a month, an email software, which is another 10 to 20, and you now have a really strong business with a very small suite of tools. So the cost and the need of tools is really lower because the AI tool can do so many different things, everything from math to programming to language to image generation. It really just lowers all of these old costs I used to have. I don't need a stock photo membership anymore. I don't need a stock music membership. You can get a music software, and those cost like $10 a month if you want to have AI music generation, if you need that for your business. So it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't need a lot of tools. There are a few tools that I like. There's a Twitter tool I like. There's a LinkedIn tool I like. 1 out of 1,000 people needs them. It's such a small number of people that it's not even worth mentioning. There are some tools that I really love that are special for certain people. There's this amazing tool that you can upload a video and it creates an entire course from it for you with quizzes and stuff. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it worked when I tested it. That's like amazing, but it's only for a specific use case, right? And I love it. Most people don't need it, right? So most people don't need all of these other tools. You don't need to spend a bunch of money. And that's why this is an exciting time, because the overhead for my business last year was like $10,000 a month. And this year it's going to go below 1,000. So it's that big of a difference the opportunity for new people to enter the market, start a business, the tech hurdle is not really there, because to learn Photoshop takes 2 years, right? You have to go to school for 2 years to get good at it. ChatGPT, you can master in a day. are you kidding me? Like, and it kind of blows my mind that people complain about the learning curve. I'm like, try learning something else. Try learning any software from before this year and then talk about it. I still can barely use Outlook compared to a power user.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I did try Adobe and outsourced for a bit through Fiverr and some other things, but then I found other resources. You're right. I mean, it is tricky. So what I'm hearing from you is there really are no excuses. And sometimes I am kind of that giddy up, take action today, suck it up, buttercup kind of attitude, but really using a network of people listening to podcasts, finding people like yourself who's already tested this out for you and explaining it, go give it a shot. And again, you don't have to do a bunch of things. Try one thing and get really consistent with it. And ChatGPT seems to be the go-to. And I remember hearing on Clubhouse when that was cool. I don't know if you ever got into that.
Oh yeah. Short window.
I think, was it a female or a male that launched ChatGPT? Because I thought it was a female, or maybe she was talking about it, but it was like her whatever 0.0 version. And they were like, it's dropped. Everyone go out there and check it out. I'm like, what are they talking about? I was driving in the car. What is this thing? And I felt really cool being in my 40s in this room where these young ones are talking about. I would jump into rooms with the younger folk that were more into like gaming just to try to hear like what's going on and what are they doing?
Important thing to know is that it's still early. 90% of people are not using AI right now. 90% or higher.
90%.
The majority of people, I think it's 86% of people have used ChatGPT 0 to 1 time, which is they tried it once and go, no thanks.
Yeah.
So you can still be easily the first person to learn, the first person in your market, the first expert. So it's not late in the game yet. It's still very early. The opportunity is still there. The market is still figuring itself out. And people are still making big mistakes in their guesses, right? Last week, everyone made a big guess about AI and they were all wrong. They all thought a new tool was going to change the game and it turned out not true. So just realize that even the experts, and I'm talking everyone I follow, posted a video, said, this is the new AI tool. It's going to be a game changer. And I wrote a post, like, what are you talking about? You haven't tested it. You just saw their demo video. 2 days later, turned out they faked the demo video. They cooked the numbers in it. And I was like, I told you guys, don't say something's good until you've used it. How many times have you seen a car commercial? It seems great. You test drive the car. You go, this is terrible. So even the experts aren't right very often. And that means that anyone who tells me, I have 5 years of AI experience, I go, I don't believe you. If you have more than 1 year, it's irrelevant because pre-AI.
Yeah, good point. So is it considered cheating if you're writing a outline for a book and getting ideas from ChatGPT for your potential book? What do you think about that?
I sure hope not. Because,
Is it something that you use to help you go creative and build out storylines?
I mean, I've written an entire book using ChatGPT. So I saw this video in February. Someone goes, you can get ChatGPT to write an outline, but it could never write an entire book. And I just said, challenge accepted. I got it to write a romance novel because I said, let me do it in a genre I don't write in. So let me just not have my thumb on the scale. Now it would not write the dirty bits. And my wife said, well, what's the point? And she's like, that's the only part of the book I like. So you have to use a different AI to write that. Yeah. So you can't get it to do that. It's very hard trained against that. Yeah. But everything up to and after those really good scenes, it will write. And you can use an open source AI to write the dirty bit. So there's a way around it. Just use a different tool. But I wrote an entire 90,000 page book. And this was in ChatGPT 3.5 early days. And it was good. So a lot of the limitations people say it has, they're wrong. It's a matter of training it and getting the right response. And that's part of it is you can take it really, really far. So I use it to edit books. I use it to write outlines. I use it to write fiction. Sometimes you're going to get a bad response. It's not right 100% of the time. So then you just have to kind of work around that and figure out what's going on. Sometimes start over. That happens. So it's not consistent because it has an element of intelligence to it. So sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not good, but it can write and it can come up with ideas. Like right now, I'll give you an example, as I've always written books the same way. And here's what I say. I say, hey, ChatGPT, give me 3 ideas for books in historical fiction. Or I was doing historical romance, right? And then now if you say science fiction, what's interesting is now, because someone said something, it will give you 7 examples of books, but they all have female protagonists. That's a change from 6 months ago. And I'm like, well, statistically, I understand, but it should be 60-40 or something. So I noticed they're doing that. Even when it's an alien, I was like, why does someone care if it's in the gender of an alien? But they do have their thumb on the scale for some political stuff, but it's dumb things. This is the thing you care about. This is the thing you took to program. It's such a silly, because I'm I don't care. But I didn't notice, I did a lot of romance novels. Romance, it's always a female protagonist. So a lot of what I've played around with is that and and paranormal romance. So I didn't notice it for a while, but other than that, you then just go, oh no, make the main character a woman or make main character a man. And then it will just do that. And you can build on that. I never think about the alien, like this alien, how this grew up or that grew up. I'm like, I just want to read spaceship battles. Like that's what I think about when I read science fiction. But certainly you can go down any path you want, which is cool. Like it's fine. It's just that's one thing I noticed is it kind of is adjusting for certain things. And I got in trouble in a romance novel I was doing because the main protagonist was a woman, and then other women in the book were jealous of her. And it was like, oh, you can't write negative stuff about women. And I was like, well, at the end of the book, they all become friends. So it actually shows that women are really good at overcoming emotional challenges. And then it goes, great, here's the answer. So it did hit a wall. And I was like, well, everyone can be jealous. It wasn't even like a really negative thing. It was like, they're jealous of the new girl at school. Like that's what the story was. And then I had to convince it. So you're going to have that stuff with fiction. You're going to run into things where it's like, oh, this is a negative portrayal of a certain type of person. So that's the one challenge, but it doesn't come up very often.
But I mean, any book, it's a fictional book. Like you get to choose the narrative and the story. If someone doesn't like it, I mean, you got to just put it down then, like this is, some people get a little bit too lost in the weeds, I suppose.
Well, you can use an uncensored AI like Mistral, which is a free tool. You download to your computer. It's about 90% as good as ChatGPT. And there are no limits. So you can have the scenes as dirty as you want or whatever.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Jonathan, you're saying that ChatGPT is going, oh, hold on, wait, because I've seen them do that. I can't give you legal advice. Can you write a variation of a legal disclosure for me? Well, I cannot give, so I see what you're saying. It's kind of policing you that it's not available to write that for you is what you were saying.
Yeah. Like it won't let me make the villain of the book a lady anymore. And I was like, well, why are you taking away her agency? I was like, shouldn't a lady have the right to choose if she wants to be a good guy or a bad guy? Like, I want her to have agency. How boring would it be if we decided from now on in every movie, the villain, no female actress will ever be hired, right? That's kind of what it's saying to me. And I don't like that. I'm like, well, what if my daughter wants to be Cruella? Now she can't because we can't have a villain in the movie. So I was like, no, there are some great roles that I don't want to take away. That's my mindset. I don't want to take away this role in every movie. It's like, it's just acting. So there are open source AIs that don't have these weird limitations that are just kind of silly. I mean, there's other things that people were doing with AI that were very naughty. I know why they added the rules, but it's like they're taking the time to choose what you can do in your fiction. I don't really care for that. I think it's a silly thing because the customers will vote. If people don't like your book, they will tell you in the reviews. I promise you. If people don't like something, they will tell you. So
that's what I thought you meant at first. I was like, oh my gosh, just put the book down. I see what you're saying now. If you're going to go true, legit, everything written that way, because again, you could always just copy it into a Word doc and edit the things. But again, the point is in our episode together today is to be creative and have some efficiency behind it. So you have fun with your family and hopefully save a lot of money in the process.
Yeah. So I think open source AIs are really worth playing around with. They're very powerful. They cost nothing. You run it on your local computer. There's ones that have restrictions and some that don't. And there's tons of training to see which ones do and which ones don't. So I happen to know for people that are like high level romance novel writers, they're using an open source AI. They use ChatGPT for the main story and then open source AI for the romantic sections. That's kind of how they bypass it. Most other genres, it doesn't really matter. But with every AI, you're going to run into the programmers. Like if you use Leonardo as an AI for image generator, you can tell that the guys that work there are all a certain type of guy because it's impossible to get an image of a woman that's not busty. I was shouting at one of my VAs. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, these are for my Pinterest. My followers on Pinterest are all women. I was like, can you stop prompting busty? He's like, I'm not doing it. I promise it's not me. And I went into the AI and I go, okay, it's not him. It tells you something about the people that work there. Like you can tell, oh, these are all tech people that work here. And I guess they don't have any lanes for anything.
Anime like, kind of.
Yeah, it's too much. Like same thing. If you look at the Midjourney Niji feed, which is like their app for anime characters, I was like, well, it's very heavily, it's like, is the only person using this 13-year-old voice? Like it's what it really feels like. So you can get a feeling for the programmers based on what tools will and will not do and kind of what they're lean towards. And it's like, you can tell, okay, these people are really into Pixar. These people are really into anime. These people are really into like busty. And I was like, this is for me, because I'm using it for work. I'm like, I can't post these images. If it's a drawing, I can't get a drawing of like a normal person.
You've mentioned Pinterest a few times. I know way back when I started my blog and I was following some of the, like a Jenna Kutcher or somebody, they're talking about Pinterest being one of the number one, top search engines, correct? Is that the reason you're there?
Yes.
For your work? Because you're investing some time, and I haven't heard of other people investing a lot of time in Pinterest. I know you have a big email list, which is a benefit in the event that Instagram, Facebook, or, politically, or they go down or whatever the story might be. You don't own that, but I find that people are more obsessed with those more than hearing about Pinterest. So I'm curious about that.
Most people think Pinterest is for recipes and sewing patterns because that's every person who's in Pinterest. That's what they show. However, Pinterest is a huge search engine. Until this year, it was like 80% female. And that's why most guys didn't pay attention. This year, 40% of their growth is male and Gen X. So it's actually men are their biggest growth factor this year.
Wow.
It's the most consistently growing platform on the internet. Every year it grows by 7.5%. It has for 15 years in a row, which nobody does. So it's the little engine that could. And every single time you post a pin, it goes, great. What do you want to link to? Whereas TikTok is like, hey, don't link out. If you put a link in the comments, we'll delete it. So it's not a social network. It's a social, it's a search engine. They want you to send traffic somewhere and they reward you for consistency and they do not like you overworking. They want you posting 5 pins a day, no more. So they don't want you putting in hours and hours and they will give you a lot of traffic.
Even if you use a scheduler, or do you get the same reward if they know that you're using an app for it?
So they have really shifted it this year to where they don't want you using a schedule. So I don't have a scheduling app anymore.
Okay.
5 pins a day. That's one of my employees. And that's because I was getting too into it. So I was like, I would spend 3 hours a day doing Pinterest, which is like a really silly thing to do. Now, Pinterest, they did a wipe recently. So they banned all AI content. So you can't talk. You search for ChatGPT, there's no results. If you search for artificial intelligence, no results. So I lost like 30% of my traffic and we're growing again now. It dipped us for 6 weeks, but it's really simple. You look at other people's pins, find 10 that you like, drag and drop those into Canva, replicate those templates, and then make your own content because you already know a look that works. And just post 5 pins a day and link to different content on your website and you will grow. It's a really simple system. There's not a lot of because they've gotten rid of all of the stuff. They've gotten rid of all the TikTok copycat stuff, the video pin stuff, the multi-page pins. They've gotten rid of all the stuff that was hard. And they're just back to single image, either a GIF, a moving image, or a flat image that leads to a link. So every single time you post something, they want you to link to somewhere else. Nobody else wants that. So it's a really good foundational tool.
Sure.
Once I got it working, I jumped my traffic from 2,000 to 11,000 a month on Pinterest in 6 weeks. I go, this is really hot. That's massive growth. Yeah. And then I hired someone to run it for me because not because it was hard, but because I'm into it and I'll just spend time on it. It's not a good ROI for me, but for someone new who's looking for that first traffic, I think it's a really good foundational tool now that I get it. I wish I'd gotten it years ago. Mostly I'm active on there and I'm active on LinkedIn. Like those are the platforms where there's the biggest opportunity right now, but absolutely, you should always be building your own website and always be building your own email list because it doesn't have to be your fault. Most people who lose their social media business, how many people were on Vine and then Vine shut down? They all lost their business. It's not their fault. How many people were crushing it on MySpace? MySpace died. It wasn't their fault. So it doesn't even have to be your fault. It could just be a change. Like there was someone who had a really great account on Instagram and it was called Meta. Guess what happened when Meta changed their business name? They go, delete. Like that's not fair, right? But it's not about fair. So very important to have control of your audience so that when you move platforms, it doesn't matter. So I've always been an email marketer. I do not like social media. I don't like the internet. So if it wasn't my job, I would never be online. Like never.
Right. But you're using your resources.
It's my work. So I am not someone who's like on Facebook when I'm not working. I'm not at the computer when I'm not working. No way. So very important to understand that to me, it's about my work. And that's why I use these tools. And I use it. So I'm not good at talking Pinterest. So that's why I use AI. For example, I'll say, I want to write a pin about this topic. Please write the description. I don't know hashtags. I don't know emojis. I'm of the emoticon age, right? I'm of the age from 1990s where you create the characters using other characters. It's not a drawing. Like that's cheating to me. So I don't know how to do any of those. Sometimes they'll say, is there emoji for a bat? I don't know. I have to look. And it was like, it'll show me a baseball bat. I go, no, the animal bat. Is there one? But sometimes there's sometimes there isn't. The emoji for a bird to me looks like a planet with a moon around it that you have to use for Twitter, but that's the bird emoji. So I don't know those things and I don't need to anymore. So I can have it right and give me the hashtags that I use there. And the same thing with my LinkedIn posts. I'll write the rough draft and say, convert this into a LinkedIn post, tweak it a little bit. So a lot of it is converting to this new language more than anything else and just getting variations faster and trying ideas faster. So everything I do, AI is massively ingrained and I test dozens of tools every month. It's a big part of my job is to test every AI tool out there. And I mean, I would love to recommend a bunch of tools to have an affiliate link for and make a huge commission. It's just unfortunately,
it's moving too fast, right? Well, you are a wealth of knowledge and inspiring. I think people do truly, and we say this in their finances too, you got to just kind of get in front of it, learn what you like to do. You have social, awareness that you shouldn't be on Pinterest. It's not a good use of your time. You'll go down the rabbit hole or whatever it is for people. But I love your story and how you've just created this world that you live in using the resources, but whatever's best for you and your family. And you just keep evolving and get into little projects that, whether it's you're writing organically or you're using AI. So I would love to let people know where to find you. And I will link up your website here in the description box, but you have a number of books on Amazon. So I'm guessing you have all your social media icons that they can find you anywhere really, right?
Yeah. If you Google serve no master, every result is me for the first 100 results. I haven't checked past that. So it's always gonna be me. Okay. I own my keyword. That's the name. So go to servemaster.com. If you go to the AI web link, servemaster.com/AI, it has all my AI stuff, a bunch of free gifts, a bunch of training, a bunch more information to kind of get you started. And that's the thing is you don't need to spend a bunch of money to get started. You just don't. It's finally the barrier to entry is not there. The cost is not there. The time cost is not there. So anyone can really jump into an online business like never before. Awesome.
Well, you are inspiring. I really appreciate you spending your morning with us today. So we'll be following you, see what you're up to.
Bye.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Pathways. For more information about the podcast, books, articles, the blog, and so much more, please visit my website at amberstitt.com. And remember, let's take action today. Thank you for listening.